Today in the New York Times, Warren Buffett, the billionaire tycoon, writes an op-ed, "Stop coddling the super-rich. Our leaders have asked for shared sacrifice, but when did they do the asking? When they asked, they spared me. I checked with my mega-rich friends to learn what pain they were expecting. They, too, were left untouched. Some of us are investment managers who earn billions from our daily labors, but are allowed to classify our income as carried interest, thereby getting a bargain 15% tax rate. Others own stock index futures for 10 minutes and have a 60% on their gain taxed at 15%, and if they had been as if they had been long-term investors." You understand that these tycoons who make their money through finance, they don't pay regular income tax. They're not subjected to the reduced tax rate of the Bush era, 32% on their income. No, they pay 15% because it's capital gains, because what they had to do was actually press a button and buy something and then sell it 10 minutes later. And so they deserve a even bigger tax break than Bush gave them if they were actually working. Last year, he writes, "My federal tax bill, the income tax I paid, as well as payroll taxes paid by me on my behalf." Of course, he's a billionaire, but only the first $100,000 of his annual income is taxed by Social Security and FICA. His tax bill was nearly $7 million. That sounds like a lot of money, but what I paid was only 17.4% of my taxable income, and that's actually a lower percentage than was paid by any of the 20 other people who work in our office. Their tax burdens range from 33% to 41% and average 36%, because they pay federal income tax on what they make, and they pay 6.34% on their as payroll tax. And of course, because they're not making millions of dollars, it's a higher percentage. Last year, 80% of these revenues that came into the government came from personal income taxes and payroll taxes. The mega-rich pay income taxes at a rate of 15% on most of their earnings, but pay practically nothing in payroll tax, relative, again, as a percentage of their income. It's a different story for the middle class. They fall into the 15 and 25% income tax brackets, and then they're hit with heavy payroll taxes to boot. I have worked with 60 investors for 60 years, and this is where he actually addresses the notion that libertarians fantasize about going Galt and the Laffer curve, and that if you tax people too much, they're not going to want to make any more money. I have worked with investors for 60 years and have yet to see anyone, not even when capital gains rates were 39.9% in 1976. Remember, they're 15% today. Shy away from a sensible investment because of the tax rate on the potential gain. People invest to make money, and potential taxes have never scared them off. No one's going to say, "I'm not going to invest in this and press this button to buy a piece of paper with a 50 or 60% return if that's subject to 28 or 32% or 40% tax. My little finger will get tired if I have to pay a higher tax rate." In 1992, he writes, the top 400 income earners in the country had aggregate taxable income of $16.9 billion and paid federal taxes of 29% on that sum. In 2008, the aggregate income of the highest 400 had soared to $90.9 billion. $90.9 billion from $16.9 billion. A staggering $227.4 million on average, but the rate paid had fallen to 21.5%. So by any measure, they're paying 8% less taxes, effective tax rate, on the millions they're making. And remember, as you have the income concentration move up the scale, less money is actually captured by the payroll tax, which is why we're seeing issues with Social Security not being able to pay its own way after 2037. Job one, though, however, he writes, for these 12 plutocrats on this committee is to pare down some future promises that even a rich America can't fulfill. In other words, let's cut some Social Security and Medicare. But my friends and I have been coddled long enough by a billionaire-friendly Congress. It's time for our government to get serious about shared sacrifice. Let me tell you why Buffett's numbers make a compelling case, but his frame is completely wrong. First off, the idea of shared sacrifice implies that somehow this is a moral obligation by people, and that may be the case. But this isn't about sacrifice. The reason why our economy has had such stagnant wages for 30 years for middle-class Americans, the reason why we see underfunding in Social Security 30 years out, is because we have too much money concentrated in too few hands. Economists call this excess capacity, and it is debilitating our economy. So forget fairness, forget shared sacrifice. They have too much money for society to function properly. This argument was made back in 1786 by Jefferson when it came to big property barons holding too much property. And it's the same argument Nouriel Roubini is making today about excess capacity. And then the second thing that Warren Buffett gets wrong is this notion that we are coddling our billionaires. As if Congress just sort of likes them and treats them with kid gloves for no other reason than they're nice. We are not seeing the coddling of our billionaires. We are seeing the billionaires gain so much money that they have an inordinate amount of control over our government. And because they have this control, they force policies that benefit them. This is not happenstance. This is not an accident. This has been a long-term project by billionaires and millionaires in this country, not all of them, to force policy decisions that necessarily benefit them. And this is a zero-sum game. When you have policy decisions over the past 30 years, as they came out in a Princeton study, that favor the rich, guess who the losers are? The other 98%, 94%, however you want to calculate this, rest of Americans. And so that's where Warren Buffett gets it wrong. And maybe he can't say this. Maybe it's enough for him to say, just change the tax policy, and I won't give up the ghost that we are running things in this country, despite the fact that we're supposedly in a democracy. But that's the fact.